Even at dawn, no one would call Manchester's skyline particularly attractive. In a few hours, though, one post-war piece of it will draw the largest gathering of people anywhere in England, just as it has roughly once a fortnight since the 1950s.
If you can imagine Manchester United in those days, every game was packed. Manchester United, 65, 70,000 people in Old Trafford, and it was the highlight of the whole week for anybody that supported football in Manchester. The place to go to was Old Trafford.
Manchester United is rightly proud of its history. The problem is that the club's past has outshone its present for nearly a quarter of a century. 24 years since the European Cup win of 1968, 25 without a domestic league championship. And though today's game is against West Ham, players and staff know they'll be facing the usual twin opponents, the week's visitors and a select 11 from United's glory days. History is a hard act to follow at Old Trafford, and no one feels the weight of United's glittering legacy more than its current custodian. Martin Edwards, chairman and full-time chief executive of Manchester United, is a man whose personal history is inseparable from his club's.
My father was a keen United supporter, and just before the Munich crash he was asked to join the board of Manchester United, and in fact he joined the day after the crash. That was in February 1958. He then became chairman in 1965 and was chairman of the club then until 1980 when he died, and I took over at that stage. I actually came here in 1952, but I can't remember much about the game. I've still got the programme. It was against Wolves. But I suppose I really started remembering was just after the Munich crash. Once my father came on the board, then I used to start attending regularly.
Over the years, Martin Edwards has had plenty of company. The mixture of myth and glamour that surrounds United has attracted more fans in more places around the world than perhaps any other football club. Just as remarkable is how few they've lost. Despite the club's lack of success by its own high standards, Manchester United remains the best supported team in England.
In a way, even though being the chairman and a director of the club, all the directors of the club were all passionately keen and passionately involved. And I suppose we, in just the same way that the supporters don't lose their enthusiasm, it's been a long time since we've won the championship, but the enthusiasm's still there.
The standards Martin Edwards aspires to were all set by a man who joined United 5 months before the current chairman was born. In fact, Matt Busby's decision to take the manager's job in 1946 probably changed the course of English football history. The rival offer he turned down was from Liverpool. Busby's first league title came in 1952 with the squad of veterans. Then, on the strength of a youth policy which made the transfer market all but obsolete, he set about raising a homegrown team good enough to win back-to-back championships in 56 and 57, and young enough to promise even greater things. By 1958, Busby's Babes looked well on their way to becoming the first British team to win the European Cup.
Munich Airport, and wreckage that tells the story of the dreadful disaster. The house about 300 yards beyond the end of the runway struck by the doomed aircraft. Here, 21 out of the 44 people aboard lost their lives when it crashed. As the news of the disaster became known, Britain was appalled. Among the fatalities were 7 members of the famous Manchester United team.
In fact, 8 players were dead, along with 3 staff, and Matt Busby himself was given the last rites. Tragedy had destroyed a great team and turned a famous club into a legendary one.
It was a great tragedy that so many great players with wonderful skills never really got the opportunity. You know, they never were able to fulfil their ambitions, and it is a fact they were really great players. Duncan Edwards was one of the great players. Even though he died at a very young age, he was one of the great players, maybe the greatest player that's ever been in this country.
After his recovery, Busby became obsessed with finishing the job Edwards and the others had started and set about building his second world-class team around the survivors of the first, men like Bobby Charlton. Dennis Law arrived for a record transfer fee to help United win the FA Cup in 1963, and from a more familiar source, United's youth scheme, came a brilliant Irish teenager.
Best with McCready, and McCready's made a pass, and it's a magnificent goal! Best, what a magnificent goal!
This combination of youth and experience brought the league championship back to Old Trafford twice in 3 seasons.
Best, Charlton going through here like a greyhound, number 2!
The unfinished business of 1958 was finally concluded at Wembley in 1968. 10 years after Munich, Matt Busby at last had the chance to honour the team which should have reached the pinnacle of European football with one that did.
This is going for Torres' head again, Eusebio, and now Grassa!
Oh,
it's 1-1. Grassa, Jamie Grassa. And George Best going through here! Yes, it must be for George Best! Georgie Best has done it! And that was a tremendous save, Kidd! Kidd it is, number 8! Charlton! Yes, indeed! Bobby Charlton! What a goal!
It was just magical to be able to do it because we tried so hard for so long to win the European Cup for Matt Busby, and I think also at the back of the minds were for the players who had set us on the European road as well. I think they were a big part of our thoughts that particular night, and it was something that we had to do.
That final piece in the construction of the United legend can still be seen, at least in replica, at the Club Museum. Equally visible on match days are 2 of the living legends who put it there. Bobby Charlton is now the one true football voice on United's board of directors. In that role, he's following in the footsteps of his old manager, now Sir Matt, United's club president and elder statesman.
Well, Sir Matt Busby was the overall. He was a god round here, Matt Busby. You know, if you mention, I mean, it was a great compliment if he actually spoke to you. He was just so high above everyone else, and Jimmy Murphy and Bert Wally, who were then the coaches, and the players. It was just the boss. The boss was the boss. This, you know, and if the boss was coming to the match, it was important.
The boss may not wield any direct power these days, but the power of his presence, along with Charlton's watching from the stands, leave United's current team with no illusions about what's expected of them.
But it is sometimes a burden to the players that we have now that the Busby Babes, the team before the accident, are always thrown up as a comparison, and it's unfair, really.
Sir Matt's continued presence at the club after he retired in 1969 hung heavy over his successors too. After 5 league championships in 23 years under one manager, 6 men failed to win 1 in the 23 years that followed. The low point for United fans was a single-season dip into the 2nd division, and despite 4 FA Cup wins since then, achievement at Old Trafford continues to be measured in league titles. This year's side represents United's best chance of winning one for a long time, and Alex Ferguson, the current trustee of the Busby inheritance, is determined that nothing should distract his squad, whether it's history or the hurt feelings of a dropped first-team player.
This isn't my mat. I'm off the Christmas list. I've said to the players time and time again, they shouldn't worry about the legends of the past. I think it's great to be part of a club with the traditions of Edwards and Coleman and Byrne and Tommy Taylor and then Bobby Charlton, George Best, Nobby Stiles, Pat Crane, Dennis Law. I mean, it's fantastic, that kind of tradition. I mean, you can't buy that anywhere. That is something that's been earned.
Not that United haven't tried buying success. During Ferguson's tenure alone, £12 million has been spent on players.
I don't think we've ever lost our ambition, even when we were having a rough time. We still went out and spent big money on players. We've always, we broke the record for Brian Robson, we broke the record for Gary Pallister. So we've never been shy to bring the best players to Old Trafford. Actually making it gel has always been the hardest problem. I think the fact that we have won the FA Cup recently and put the European Cup Winners' Cup beyond under our belt, and just the other night we beat Red Star Belgrade to win the European Super Cup. The more trophies players win, the more confidence it gives them, and the more confidence it gives the supporters. So yes, I think that we are on a bit of a high at the moment, and there are great expectations.
A win today will put Manchester United back at the top of the English First Division. But the club's tradition demands something extra, that success be delivered in style. The legacy of Charlton and Best is one of flair and glamour. There are signs that the current team, a similar blend of youth and experience, are worthy heirs. While the terraces celebrate in the traditional way, upstairs Ryan Giggs' goal is toasted with a drop of Chateau Old Trafford. Manchester United is a club rich in more than just history.
If you go back to 1964-65, when we were the first club to put boxes in, that was for the World Cup in '66, and we've had a number of firsts here at Manchester United. I think we were the first club to start an executive suite. We were also the first club to put in our club museum. So we have had a number of firsts. I think we're the only English football club. I know Celtic and Rangers do. They run their own pools competition. Again, we run our own pools, and we've been doing that since 1961. And I think you'll find that our souvenir shop is probably busier than most.
In fact, Manchester United are almost as profitable off the field as on it. Gate receipts and programme sales for the 1990-91 season brought in just over £9 million. Television, sponsorship, advertising and royalties from the improbable range of merchandise that can be stamped with a United logo boosted the club's total income nearer to £18 million.
Generally, we are very keen on the commercial side, because we believe the more we can generate there, the more we can spend on the players, the more we can spend on the stadium, and now we're a public company, the more we can give out to shareholders as well.
Manchester United FC became part of Manchester United plc in May 1991, when shares in the club were floated on the stock exchange in London. The stated aim was to widen ownership of the club and to raise cash for the conversion of the famous Stretford End into an all-seater stand, something forced on the club by new safety laws. To his critics, the fact that the flotation also made Martin Edwards a millionaire many times over simply confirmed long-held views that the United legend was being sold off, and Sir Matt's original vision subverted by businessmen more interested in finance than football. In pure money terms, the float was a success, but the investors were mainly city institutions, not individual fans. And many of those who did buy shares in their beloved club remain unhappy.
As far as the shareholders meeting, that was previously a way whereby fans could vent their feelings. But as of yesterday's auspicious first shareholders meeting of the PLC, we were told that footballing matters were not to be discussed, lest the share prices be affected on the stock market. So I as I say, there is a general club line that gets put through. I think most fans love the club despite that, and not because of that.
Although the flotation was unpopular with many of the fans, it did achieve its second goal, raising part of the money for the Stretford End scheme.
Obviously, we will be putting new facilities in there, we're putting new boxes in there, new executive lounges. We're also planning to build an exhibition hall underneath the stadium there, again, all geared to generate more income for the club.
But while the scheme expands the club's financial horizons, it will reduce access to ordinary fans. More seats mean a smaller total capacity at Old Trafford, and with people often locked out now because of sell-out crowds, supporters say they're becoming victims of their own years of loyalty.
I think they're going to hit a problem there in the next year or two where the capacity of the ground really isn't going to be big enough to cater. With the new development of the Stretford End, the capacity is going to be reduced possibly to about 43,000, where the average this season has been about 44, 45. So I think they've got to look at the long term when they do decide to rebuild the Stretford End, that the capacity of the stadium will have to be adjusted to cater for it, because we're having a situation at the moment where supporters are being locked out. When you take the like of season ticket holders, league match ticket book holders, that they're going to take up the capacity of the crowd, so the chances for supporters travelling distances like ourselves or from Europe, it's going to be very difficult for us to get a ticket to get into the match, you know.
From the club's point of view, I think they feel that the fans just don't appreciate the situation. They don't accept that they've no option about this, that the government, following the Justice Taylor report, have got to make the stadium all-seater, and that there's a time limit on this, and that the club say is the only reason that they're reducing the capacity. They're going to redevelop the Stretford End because they have to, because it's an all-standing area, and make it all seats, which brings the capacity tumbling down.
Martin Edwards says the club will look at increasing Old Trafford's capacity in the future if the money's available. But while plans proceed for the redevelopment of the Stretford End, complete with its luxury boxes, there comes more bad news for the majority of fans. Because of the stadium's reduced capacity, it's announced that ticket prices are to go up sharply. United is now a club with obligations to its shareholders as well as its supporters. With United 2-0 up at half-time and now only 45 minutes away from going back on top of the league, the fans who've managed to make it inside the ground are happy. Edwards acknowledges, though, that no amount of success is ever likely to make him a crowd favourite, and he admits that at times he's doubted himself.
When I first took the job, I felt, well, I didn't sort of think about ending or whatever else. And then, as you mentioned earlier on, when times got a little bit tough, I then began to question myself whether, in fact, it might be better for the club if I stepped aside. And actually, that was about the time that Michael Knighton came along.
Well, before a ball has been kicked in the new season, Manchester United have made huge headlines. This is Michael Knighton, a 37-year-old millionaire who's bought a controlling interest in the club. And the new owners promise to make Manchester United the greatest football club in the world, and his first task here to establish a rapport with the fans on the Stretford End.
Knighton's rapport didn't last long, either with the fans or the United board. A property developer, he arrived at Old Trafford juggling the ball and financial projections with equal boldness. He offered £10 million for control of the club and guaranteed another £10 million for ground improvements. But the money he was offering turned out to belong to a number of backers, and when their support faded, so did his takeover.
He was prepared to put money in to develop the Stretford End, money that I personally hadn't got, and at that time we hadn't considered flotation. And at that stage I began to wonder whether I should step aside. And as you say, since then we've won the FA Cup, and we've now won the Cup Winners' Cup, and we've begun to get a little bit of success. And I think people internally, the staff are quite happy at the moment, and the players are obviously enjoying it. So at the moment I don't question that. I think if ever I was to call it a day, it would be because I suddenly felt, well, maybe I've been doing it too long, maybe I've become a little bit stale, maybe I can't give the club the direction it needs, maybe somebody else could do a better job. At the moment I don't feel that. Whether I feel that in the future, I really can't say.
In the days of men like Charlton and Nobby Stiles, who's still at Old Trafford as a member of the coaching staff, United went into Europe with nothing to declare but their own brilliance. When Brian Robson lifted the European Cup Winners' Cup, though, he was carrying the hopes of the whole country. United's return to Europe was also England's first since the ban on league clubs imposed in the wake of the Heysel Stadium tragedy.
It was extremely important for us, but it was even more important, I think, for English football. The fact that our supporters did behave throughout Europe, all the way through the competition, and in Rotterdam they were a perfect example that we showed the world that perhaps things aren't as bad as other people thought, that English fans can behave in Europe.
The good behaviour of United's travelling support has been matched at home, where games are now largely trouble-free. But Martin Edwards believes that the fans, like the team, are still unfairly judged on their past reputation.
It is not the problem that people perceive it to be abroad. I mean, the unfortunate thing is that the examples that the foreigners have of English football always goes back to Heysel and Hillsborough, which were two tragic days, and nobody can deny that. But as a result of that, the feeling is that Britain is rife with hooliganism. I don't think there is as much football hooliganism in England as there is in a lot of other European countries at this moment in time.
As well as re-establishing themselves in Europe, Manchester United have rediscovered the secret Matt Busby first used to get them there, a sound youth policy. No one would deny the value to the team of big signings like Brian Robson, but as he nears the end of his career, a new crop of homegrown players is emerging.
It was a main motive when I first arrived to build a youth system that was going to produce us top players, and we have done very well so far. And this year's apprentices and youth team is the best we've had for many, many years.
Potentially the best of all is Ryan Giggs. Inevitably, his age and ability have drawn comparisons to another player who made his debut in the number 11 shirt at the age of 17.
George Best sold two dummies and now has made a chance for himself. His hat-trick!
Of course, George Best's inability to cope with the pressure of his own success resulted in drink problems and an early end to a brilliant career. Flattering though the parallels may be between the new number 11 and the old, the club is anxious to see that they aren't repeated off the field.
Well, we feel that they should enjoy their youth. They should grow up as normal as any other apprentices here. We don't see why if the media decide that they're going to focus on a 17-year-old boy, that we should agree to that. We should be in control of a young boy. And for his parents' part, that maybe it's new to them, they've got to trust us that we know what we're doing. And we have got many examples of the vulnerability of young players with the media.
Those worries aside, Ferguson is happy that he now has a team capable not just of shouldering the United legacy, but adding to it.
It's the best side easily. I think Brian Robson made that point just a few weeks ago. It's the best side in his time here. But down to the nitty-gritties really, for Manchester United, they should be winning a trophy every year. Now, we hope it's going to be the Championship. Sometime in the near future, we hope it's this year. If not, we hope it's next year. But that is certainly, there would be a tremendous millstone lifted from us and the supporters. That pressure of not having won the league for 25 years is a long, long time. But the most important thing is to make sure we have a good, entertaining side that is winning things. We just have to now guard against complacency.
And should the team lose sight of that message as the prospect of a league championship begins to loom large, the opposition are always happy to oblige with reminders.
Stopped in his tracks by Steve Bruce. Quick free kick for West Ham. McAvenny! It's 2-1. Manchester United caught out.
Despite the temporary scare of West Ham's goal, United hold on for a victory, which puts them back at the top of the English First Division. The closer they get to finally laying the league title curse to rest, though, the more reluctant they are to tempt fate by speaking about it.
Sorry. Not now. Would you say of all the seasons you've been here, this season you have a better chance than any of winning the championship?
I think we're the best squad we've ever had, no doubt.
So you're hoping to be in the same place at the end of May?
Well, you never know. I hope so.
Thanks, Alex.
In a way, we're no different to any of the supporters, and I think supporters sometimes find that hard to believe, but it is a fact. And I won't rest or stop striving until we actually win that championship. Then once you win the championship, you then want to go on and win the European Cup. And I suppose if you win that, you then want to win it again. So there's always something to aim for in football.
A mixture of faith in the future and loyalty to the legend is what keeps United fans coming. And it's their unrivaled support which has enabled the club to prosper, even during the long years when the team was struggling. Since Sir Matt Busby first brought the league championship to Old Trafford, football has become big business. The question for the current custodians of the United legacy is whether football or business comes first.
What I would like to see is a successful team on the field, supported with a very successfully run business off the field.
I've grown up with everything that's happened here at Manchester United. I'm always interested in it. Manchester is a great city, and it should have a great football team. We've got to make sure that Manchester United is the team.